Alright, so this is a step-by-step video on how you can basically install Kali on VirtualBox. So all you have to do, at least first, is go straight to your browser and you have your VirtualBox. So you have VirtualBox, type in VirtualBox download, VirtualBox. Just type it on your Google search that way, and then go for the first link. Obviously VirtualBox download, the first link is fine. This should bring you to this point. If you're not in here, please click the right thing. If you're on a Windows computer like I am right now, you could go ahead to click Windows host. Clicking on it would immediately start the download. If you're on Mac, please go ahead and start the download by clicking on it, and for Linux as well as Solaris. Now the next thing you need is the ISO file, which is basically ISO file for Kali. So basically you can just search for Kali download. You see, it's just easy. You just type this download, that download. Google is smart enough to get it. And there, the first one is actually the one from kali.org. So that's where we want to go into. Now this is where it requires a bit of explanation. You see a lot of images in here. This is the ISO image that we need. You could see, if you read through here, single or multiple boot Kali, giving you complete control over the hardware access. Basically, with this particular one, I could have Kali as my main operating system. It's basically the big guy here. We could have it inside the virtual machine or VirtualBox as well. So this guy is a really big guy. I'm going to be downloading this, but first we have the ones for virtual machines. If you want to be specific about where you want to put it, VMware, VirtualBox, and you want a image specifically made for VirtualBox or an image specifically made for VMware, you could go ahead and click this. I always use the installer images because it could do this as well, and that's what I'll be using to explain this class. This is for mobile, that is for the ham templates, cloud, containers. You could check through the rest, but this is what we want to click. And under the installer image, of course, if you're on a 64-bit system, please use the 64-bit. If you want a 32-bit version, use the 32-bit version. Basically, if you're on 64, you can still run 32, but if you're on 32, you can't run 64. So we'll be using 64-bit version of Kali, and all you have to do is click the download button right here. And if you want to torrent it, you could use the torrenting here. Some would show you the hash value, so it makes sure that you're not downloading the wrong file. So basically you click download for this one. We would not be using these guys, but you could read about them. So click download here, and that should immediately start the download up there. I won't be downloading it since I already have the file. Once you've downloaded that, go straight, install your VirtualBox, and once you've installed it, search for VirtualBox over there. The installation is quite straightforward for VirtualBox, so it's not a big deal. So opening up VirtualBox in here, you would see a bunch of stuff on the home screen, but what you want to go through is new. We use new for new virtual machines, and if you have an existing virtual machine you want to put in here, you're going to click the add button. For instance, if we decided to use the one specifically for VirtualBox, the download that was specifically for VirtualBox or VMware, would want to use the add instead of new. For now, I'm going to click new. So because I want to create a new virtual machine, and I'm going to call this security class. Security, basically. And here you can see it's asking for the ISO image, which is basically the image you downloaded previously. All you need to do is click on it, select order, and go ahead to wherever you kept it. It could be in your downloads, it could be anywhere, but this is mine right here. So once you click it, you'll see this image file, so it's basically the one we need. You could double click on it or click it and click OK or whatever. So it's going to select it as Ubuntu. Don't bother about that. Click next, and in here you're going to select the amount of RAM, memory basically, that you want allocated to it. Putting at least 2 gig is what is recommended, but if you want a faster system or better, utilization, you could use 3 or more. Depending on how strong your system is, of course, you would see it in here. I have 4 processors on this PC. If you do not know how many processors you have, you can basically search for this system information and you get it from somewhere in here, processor, and then you would see 4 logical processors, 2 cores. Then you can see that, oh, you have 4 logical processors. So basically, in case it doesn't show up for you, so I'm going to be using 2 processors out of 4. Click next. Please do not use the enable EFI. And here we're going to be creating the virtual hard disk. Basically, the disk size that is necessary for this for Kali is usually recommended at 20 gig, but you could increase it. I would not recommend 20 gig because sometimes the installation fails, especially if you want to select a different interface. Sometimes the installation could fail. So I'm going to put 30 gig in here. I'm not pre-allocating the full size. I wanted to build up to 30 gig, and if I had an existing disk like Crusher and I wanted to use Crusher's disk, I basically select it and I would use Crusher's disk or any other disk that is in there. But create a virtual disk now is what I'm going for. Click next. VMware VirtualBox is really fast with these things. So once you are done with all of that and you make sure it's correct, you go ahead and click on finish. Now clicking on finish, you are going to be ready with what you need, so to speak. Alright, so here we are. Our security VM is right here. It's powered off. It's time to turn it on. So click start and we begin. Over here you can see a lot of information about the machine, the network, the USB, the storage, the display. You could also change the settings as you will because it's basically a virtual machine. Virtual machine is a software emulation of a physical system, right? So it's basically a virtual machine and we're going to run through all that we need about it. Make this bigger. Now there's something about Kali, about VMware you should be aware of. Before we talk on that, please make sure you click inside it and try moving the keyboard around. Clicking with your mouse and move the keyboard so it doesn't pick a default option. Click on the graphical install because that's what we'll be using. And of course, while that is going through, I'm going to explain this. Over here in the file, you're going to see just the default options you see in normal file systems. And we have our preferences, warnings, reset of warnings for this. And machine, basically, this is where you can get settings for this particular machine and change the settings as you will. You could also take a snapshot of the machine, look at the machine, you see the session information over here also. Take note of the shortcut keys, host S, host T. Now, host key is the right control key on your keyboard. You have a left control key and you have a right control key on your keyboard. The host key is the right control key. So we have all of this in here. You could go through it. Full screen is host F. So of course you could press right control and F and that switches to full screen. This thing is pretty annoying. You could just cancel it in here. And here we're just going to go through all the answers. English is fine. I'm going to pick the United Kingdom and data transfer has been okay. That was for the stuff I was downloading. And we're going to stick to British English. And after British English, we are going to look at what we're going to see right there. Okay, let's wait for it to complete. So it's loading all the information that we need in here. It's quite straightforward from here. We just have to wait. Alright, so we have to input the host name at this point. The host name basically is going to be the name on your network, right? So you could leave it by default because we rarely will be using that on Kali. The domain name can be left empty. Click continue. And here we have the full name for the new user. Put it to be any full name you want. I'm just going to call it security because this is going to be a virtual environment we're going to be using for testing. I don't need to put in my details in there. That would automatically translate to the username for the account, and I'm going to just leave it that way or change it to anything I want. Put in a password. I do not like putting a password that is too secure because we'll type it in a lot of times in the terminal. So I'm just going to leave it this way. For you, you might want to use it for a better purpose than what I'm doing right now. But if you're just using for testing, for practicing, please just put a simple password. So here we go, setting up the clock. We just need to wait. So we have this about partitioning the disk. It's better for you as a beginner to use the entire disk. Guided, use the entire disk instead of setting up extra partitions like this. So we'll go with that. And this is the disk we are trying to partition, the one I created. And to click continue. All files in one partition, of course, recommended for new user. Click continue and guided partitioning. And yes, finish the partition and write the changes to disk. Say yes over here to write changes to the disk, and then you continue. Alright, so we get presented with these options. These are probably the most important options you should see in here. This determines how your Kali is going to look and feel. So most people would leave it at the default. The X-Files is going to be the default environment. Some people prefer the GNOME interface, the GNOME interface. Basically, that is up to you. The GNOME interface looks like, let me see if I can just pull it up. Let's see. Can we pull it up? Can we pull it up? Can we pull it up? Well, let's leave it. Let's leave it. So GNOME interface is gonna look a little bit different depending on your preference, but since it's for everybody, we're gonna start with the default. And if you wanted, you could go with the GNOME interface right now. So just click continue, and you are good to go. Alright, so at this point we have the grub bootloader. This actually took a really long time to install, but when you have the grub bootloader, it's the guide that starts up with the installation, with the login in, that little bootloader basically. Windows has its own bootloader. This is Kali's bootloader. So please install it because there is no other bootloader on it. Select this drive and click continue, and that is about it. At this point, you just have to wait through this whole process. Alright, so finally our installation is complete and we proceed with continue, and that's all is done. You should have your Kali loaded in